Hello and welcome to NexTalks. I'm Nex, and this is where I talk. Today we're talking about magic, and this is also kind of like a spirituality part 2. So one of my previous episodes was entitled Spirituality, and this is kind of a continuation of what we were talking about there. So let's get into it. If you didn't catch the previous episode, I talk about my relationship with Christianity growing up and my moving away from the Christian church and moving away from organized religion, but really, for me personally, I moved away from spirituality too. And that was for over a decade. A friend of mine referred to science as a religion the other day that she pulled from a book that she's reading. I'll have to ask her what book it is. Maybe I'll include it in the description here, although I haven't read it myself. And I think that kind of was my religion for a long time. And just recently I've started studying spirituality again. I was reflecting back on experiences that I've had that felt very divine. They felt like confirmations to me that in those contexts, God existed, but for me now, that there is something else. There is some other higher power, some other entity or entities. There is some way to communicate with this other. And maybe you think it's all internal and it's just part of the psyche and it's intuition, and maybe you're more on that science side of the spectrum, and that's perfectly fine too. A lot of what I'm going to be talking about today is relevant to anyone. So for over a decade, not only did I miss out on the opportunity to continue to explore my relationship with this other, but I missed out on community. The community that comes together in organized religions and beliefs and rituals and practices, and the true beauty that is created when people come together for a higher good and a higher purpose. Because there's a common thread in pretty much every belief system of doing good, doing better. And generally speaking, that's a pretty positive message. And people can get behind that. They can unite together on trying to be the best versions of themselves, trying to learn and grow together and to commune, to connect with other humans in this human superorganism that I read about in a book recently called Connected. I may have talked about it in a previous episode. But they talk about how everything we do has this ripple effect through humanity, and that the energy we exchange with one person not only impacts that person, but everyone they interact with after that point. So generally, I think a lot of practices and religions and this whole community effect is a net positive one overall, because people are coming together and they're trying to be good to each other and together, and to be good to others together. So not only are you being the best versions of yourselves, but collectively there's that synergy. There's that reward that comes from deep within as belonging to a community. The way that we feel when we're part of a community is difficult to put into words, but it is something that I was missing for a long time. And one of the things I always extolled as one of the virtues of the Christian church, which is my only really experience with religion and spirituality prior to this season in my life, but that was always something that I said was one of the best parts, was getting all together and singing and dancing and, just basically doing something positive. We would give to charities and talk about messages of self-development and just being good people. As I've opened back up to the idea of spirituality and connecting with this other, this source, God, universe, however you like to call it, I've been trying a lot of different things, and I wanted to share some of those with you here today. One of them is magic and actual witchcraft and paganism and Wiccanism. And take a moment, especially people I know, if you were raised Christian, kind of like what comes up in you when you hear those words. Are you immediately scared? It's amazing the amount of fear that can come around others, and I'm not talking about capital O other, like we've been referring to that source, that spirit in this episode. I'm talking about when you're part of a group and then everyone outside of the group, they're like the others. And sometimes we can be so afraid of anything that we don't understand. And that was me. I definitely would not have been encouraged and supported in my Christian upbringing to explore pretty much any of the things that I am exploring these days, but I have found such amazing power and beauty from these practices and from these different rituals and beliefs and visualizations and meditations, which I'll share with you here today, that I just feel really inspired to share it with others, because I know there's people in situations similar to mine, or they're somewhere along their journey and maybe they don't know about this stuff and maybe they like it too and they want to adapt some or even all of it into their own practices. And I think that's the best way to be spiritual in this super organism of humanity, is to have our own practices, take what we like, leave what we don't, and allow others to do the same without judgment, to the best of our ability. So one spiritual practice that has always resonated with me, even through my time of being detached from the idea of spirituality, is meditation. I think I talk about it on every single episode, and if you're not meditating yet, what are you doing? It's time. It's time to start your daily meditation practice, no matter what you believe. Meditation is not against any religion. So praying in groups is very common in the Christian church, and I think I've missed that type of experience. I don't really get to meditate in groups, I guess a little bit in yoga classes, but usually they don't give you very long to meditate in the classes, and it's just a little bit different experience than kind of praying and communing with this higher power. It's much more introspective and usually a lot more based on just relaxing the body, at least in that context of a yoga class. So I'm excited because I signed up for a meditation and Buddhism class that I plan to attend pretty much every week. So I'll be learning more about Buddhism and their spiritual practices and the types of meditation that they do, so I can share that with you guys. But I'm just excited to kind of be learning something new right now in that regard. I think another beautiful practice that could be argued is a spiritual one is holding space for people. This is just kind of listening, like actively listening to what someone is saying and not worrying about what you're going to say or what they want from you or what your role is here, other than to just receive the message that they're putting out and to just listen to them. And then when they're done talking, which if you stay quiet, they're going to say a lot. They're going to fully share the fullness of their ideas, and then you can respond. You'll know what to say when the time comes. Don't worry about that. Just listen and hold that space. And I feel like that just leads to really beautiful connections, deeper understanding of other people, and if anything, I would say that's a pretty spiritual experience, to get to know a little bit more of the essence of another person who's having a whole different experience on this earth than you are. Okay, let's talk witchcraft. I'm sure a lot of you are interested in this. So I did a little research, and one of the earliest records of a witch is in 1 Samuel in the Bible. It's in the Old Testament, and that's thought to have been written between 931 and 721 BC. And in this account, King Saul, goes to a witch, the witch of Endor, and asks her to summon the spirit of his dead son, Samuel. Now, there are many different paths that witchcraft and paganism and Wiccanism took since then, and I'm very new to my study of this. I don't know all of the history, and I don't plan to include all of the history of all the different sects of witchcraft and the differences between them in this episode, because I really just want to tell you the parts that have resonated with me and what I like, so that you can implement this into your own practice as much as you want, or at least just have a different perspective on what magic is and what witchcraft is and what it can be used for and why it may actually have some legitimate power. So one thing that really resonates with me with some of the practices I've been learning about is calling in the elements, calling in the 4 elements of nature and calling on the directions of the earth. So generally, the direction east is associated with the element of air. The direction south is associated with the element of fire. The direction west is associated with the element of water. And the north direction is associated with earth and the element of earth. And now sometimes witches will call on, and I've heard that witches is a derogatory term. I don't know, whatever you want to call them, pagans, whatever the proper politically correct term is for it. I'm just going to say witches because I feel like it's more accessible. A lot of people understand what you mean by that. And generally, I think we all kind of accept the idea of like good witches, like witches who want to just heal and be light and focus on positive energy. And there's really no harm in that, in my opinion, but everyone has a right to their own opinions. At this stage in my journey, I've been affectionately referring to myself as a witch. I'm having fun with it. I enjoy it. I think it brings me positive energy and happiness, and it allows me to bring that energy to other people in my life as well. So maybe I'll have a change of heart on this in the future, but for now, I'm happy to call myself a witch. And some people who practice this will call on the guardians of the watchtowers of each of the directions. And I see no harm in that. I think a lot of ritual is about keeping tradition and culture alive. I actually like the idea of using words that people have been using for at least decades, if not centuries. It kind of connects us all. It's like we're all tapping into the same power. It's like when people pray to God or Jesus, like they're all united in what they're focusing on. And I see no harm in calling on the guardians of the watchtowers. It doesn't have to be literal, exact. A lot of times when you talk to Hindus, it's like they don't necessarily believe there's like a literal elephant god necessarily. It's a lot of times it's just the essence and the energy of what that represents. So like I said, what you're calling on. So by calling on this imagined being, perhaps imagined, of a guardian of a watchtower that is in charge of the direction of north and the element of the earth, it gives you a visual. It allows you to personify it to some extent. It allows you to try to conceive of this thing that, generally speaking, seems to be pretty inconceivable, difficult to put into words, difficult to put your finger on. And this is just a way that people in the past have used to infuse visualization and personification into their practices and into their rituals as they focus on that energy and what that represents to them. So I like it. I think it's cool to connect with so many different people around the world using these same words and kind of having these same intentions and focusing on the same energies. I think that's a positive thing, and I enjoy it because it does give me that feeling of being part of a community, and it feels harmless. I don't see anything wrong with saying words and having visualizations. It doesn't really matter if you take it literally or not. And the reality is, I enjoy keeping this tradition alive of healing energy and believing that I have powers to manifest what I want for this world and for myself and my life and the people around me, even people that I don't know. I like when someone seems to be having a rough day and they're driving aggressively to envision wrapping up their car in a bubble of healing light and basically praying for them and sending positivity and healing and understanding and help and support and love and nurturing and gentleness to anyone, and really believing that I'm sending that out there and putting that energy out into the world. Because the more we focus on this, visualize this, practice this, the more we're actually going to give those energies out in our interactions with other people. And that is magic. That's absolutely magical. So let's talk about that idea of a bubble around something. In magic, circles are a big part of the tradition, and oftentimes a circle will be cast or created before the casting of a spell or some type of ritual practice. Sometimes it's just a meditation for me. I'll envision opening up a circle, calling on all of the directions, all of the elements, and then what you do is you visualize that circle being like a bubble, keeping out negative energy. It's a boundary. It's a spiritual boundary, and everything inside is what we're focused on, and everything outside cannot influence it. We're not affected by outside external influences. We're focusing our magical energy inside this circle. It can be as small or as big as you want. It can be around your whole house or the room you're in, or it could be a circle on a surface in front of you that's smaller. And you envision filling up this circle with light. So it's a light visualization. And you're envisioning this circle filling and almost vibrating, buzzing with magical light energy, healing energy, Then you imagine that energy and that light filling you up and filling up your whole body until your whole body is radiating this beautiful light, and you're almost buzzing right alongside of it. You feel that energy, and you know that you are this energy. You are the light, and you are healing power. Sometimes I'll visualize my hands being light and really feeling that light coming from my hands, and my ability to manifest, my ability to create, my ability to love, my ability to heal. And then at the end of a ritual or a spell generally, or even a meditation if you just want to use this as a visualization aid, then you close the circle, which is also known as opening the circle, because the idea here, as we thank all the elements and all the directions for bringing their energies and their powers to our practice, then we allow that focused energy, that bright, blindingly white light from our bodies and that circle to dissipate out into the world. We let it go. We let it run forth from us, and we envision that magical energy, that healing energy filling up the world, filling up the universe, and being released out into the world. So it's a way of kind of harnessing and focusing your energy and all of these feelings that are associated with a white light. A lot of the magic I've been studying is earth magic, which involves going outside, getting into nature, getting in touch with the elements, getting your hands dirty, growing plants or foraging for different types of materials for spells or for incense, some type of cleansing practice or consecrating of a new magical tool that you're bringing in or a new crystal into your life, and really getting out into the elements, which has proven scientific benefits. I was actually going to do this whole episode just about that, but I realized that there's not really great science around this. There's a lot of unsuredness around causation and correlation in terms of, is it just that people who are happier, move to the coasts and get more sunshine and live near water, or is it that living near water and getting a lot of sunshine is making them happier? And the jury's kind of out on that in the scientific community, but I think we all know the benefits of getting outside, touching grass, getting sun on our skin, even getting moonlight on our skin, that fresh air, feeling the breeze, hearing all of the different critters, all the different animals and creatures in nature. It's amazing when you look around, we are surrounded by magic. There is so much magic in every entity and every living thing. So in my very brief introduction to witchcraft and my practice and experience with it, it incorporates community, tradition, ritual, healing, visualization, meditation, silence, and getting outside and getting connected with the outside world and the elements of nature. So I see a lot of benefits already, and I'll share more with you as I go and as I learn new things. I do know that the next upcoming event on the Pagan Circle of the Wheel, which is kind of like their calendar and all the different festivals that they celebrate, which are usually based on some type of natural occurrence. The next one coming up is Ostara. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing that properly, but it's the celebration of the spring equinox. And this year in 2023, that's occurring on March 21st. And that is when the day and night will be exactly equal length. So we get the same number of hours of daylight as the same number of hours of nighttime. And that is a pagan celebration and festival. And that's a great time to do magic and connect with the earth for the springtime and the upcoming spring season. There's also different types of energies and magics associated with the different seasons. So in the meantime, if you want to connect with some winter magic practices before you get into the spring practices, whatever resonates with you, there is so much potential and there's so much variety of different ways to express your magic and get in touch with the magic of the earth. Now, before I let you go, I want to share with you probably my most cherished and favorite practice, at least as of the recording of this episode, which is the reading of tarot cards, which is a form of divination, meaning it's a way to communicate with source, with other. And the way that you do that is by pulling a card from a tarot deck. There are 78 cards, and each card has a different meaning. Each card represents a different aspect and element of your life and a different energy, something different to focus on. And I cannot adequately express the amazing experiences that have come from my tarot deck. And I've only had it for maybe a week or a little longer than that. But I feel in multiple different occasions that I'm being spoken to directly by this being that I communicate with through prayer, meditation, and just basically thinking to it, whatever you want to call that. And no matter what you believe, the amount of human connection that I've experienced because of these cards, the amount of beautiful action that I have taken and others have taken because of what the cards have said to us, and the amount of introspection and reflection that they have facilitated and fostered with myself and others in my community and my network is mind-blowing. I mean, regardless of what you believe, these cards have really accomplished so much good in such a short period of time. I think it's worth looking into if it's something that seems interesting to you, and to realize that there's nothing to be afraid of in a deck of cards. If you don't believe in it, you don't believe in it. But if you do, there are some pretty powerful messages to behold. A lot can be said to you from one single card. Sometimes our drawings and readings will involve multiple cards, but each card in and of itself has so much power and so much potential to communicate to us. Whether you think it's you communicating to yourself or not, there's still power there. There's still value there. And I wanted to share with you guys a little bit about tarot because I'm sure there's people that don't know much about it. I'm not going to give a rundown of each card, but I'll give you a general overview before I close out this episode. So there are 78 cards in a tarot deck. The first 22 are the major arcana, and they demonstrate a story, the story of the Fool. And it starts with the Fool, it ends with the World, and it's supposed to illustrate a type of story in different seasons and cycles of life and of the human experience. So each one is kind of like a character or a certain energy, and they're considered to be pretty powerful cards. The remaining 56 cards consist of the minor arcana, and they're made up of 4 suits, just like a regular 52 card deck you may be familiar with clubs, spades, diamonds, and hearts. In tarot, there are 4 suits as well. They are pentacles, wands, cups, and swords. Each suit has 14 cards in it, so very similar to a normal deck of cards. There's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And then instead of Jack, Queen, King, Ace, in the tarot deck, it goes Page, Knight, Queen, King, Ace. Although Ace is more likely to be before 2 than it is to be after King. That's kind of irrelevant, but they all represent different energies, different messages, different things to reflect on in your life, and I have found them to be amazingly useful. These cards have told me to record episodes such as this. The cards have told me that I am loved and supported by this entity that I am connecting with. The cards have gotten me to give gifts and to receive gifts and become aware of blockages that I have around receiving or giving, and scarcity mindset and leaning into abundance mentality. And so many things, there's so much crossover between these spiritual practices and the study of psychology and personal development that I've been on for over a decade. And I just think it's really beautiful to find this kind of marriage between the two. One thing I've noticed about the tarot cards, at least my deck in particular, it's almost like as soon as they come out, people let their walls down. People become vulnerable, they become open, and I'm able to connect with people on a way deeper level than I was ever really able to before, unless it's a very close friend that I spent a lot of time around. But even just meeting someone right away, just last night, I was out, I was just kind of shuffling my cards, having fun with just kind of fidgeting with them and shuffling them and kind of exchanging energy with them. And a random person that I didn't know, we ended up talking, and later she asked me about the cards I had been playing with earlier. I just told her they were tarot cards, and immediately she was like, will you do my reading for me? And she drew her own cards, and I ended up finding out so much about her life and what she's up to right now. It was amazing. And even another person who was hanging out with us who didn't actually get a reading, but as soon as I pulled the cards out, this guy just starts telling me so much about his life. And it's like, it's just facilitating communications. It's deeper than just a simple, how are you? I like your dress. This is like, hey, this card is saying this. And then it's up to them as much as they want to share. People can keep their conversations and the messages they're receiving from a tarot card private and personal if they'd like to, and they're free to share. So it just kind of opens up your own vulnerability, whether you're reading the cards for yourself, and it can open up some really amazing connections and experiences with other people that I just wouldn't trade for anything. So I am pro tarot, at least as of now, and I wanted to share that with you guys because I know it's something that a lot of people probably are a little bit resistant towards because of maybe the way that they were raised or things that they've heard or fear of appearing foolish. But I just want to encourage you that whatever seems like a fun, interesting thing to do to you, listen to that voice, listen to your intuition, start leaning towards the things that feel good to you. And if this doesn't feel good to you, then don't lean into it. We're all going to be taking different paths, and we're all going to have different things that resonate with us. And I think that's really cool, really beautiful, and I have no problem with that whatsoever. So my encouragement for you this week is to find what resonates with you in your spiritual life. Incorporate some type of ritual or practice into your life and take time to connect with Source. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of NexTalks. I'm Nex. I talked. I hope you liked it. If there's something else you'd like to hear me talk about, or if you'd like to add to this conversation about magic and spirituality, you can do so in the comments, or you can reach out to me on social media. If you did like this episode and if you like this show, please consider supporting at the website nexjuice.com. That's NexJuice.com.